So good evening, friends. Let me start off by congratulating all of you and myself for, without applying too much of foresight, but with some bit of help retrospectively, being able to choose an industry which has turned out phenomenal in the last 15, 20 years. Imagine going back 10 or 12 years, and when we started IFL Wealth in 2008, if you would have been in broking instead of being in wealth management. The size of the industry itself has contracted by 80 to 90% over the last 10 years. Irrespective of who you were, whether you were a superstar, whether you were a rock star, more often than not, you would have become a smaller pie of an even smaller industry. So good news, friends, for all of us today is we are in an industry which is growing magnifold and growing in geometric ways year after year and will continue to grow. In this kind of environment, challenges will always be there. There will be pressures on retentions. There will be more and more demanding clients. There will be the regulator who wants to compress margins. But at the heart of the issue is the size of the market is growing. And as long as the size of the market is growing, I think opportunities will be abundant. Opportunities will be abundant on the wealthiest. Opportunity will be abundant at the retail level. As a firm, we focused more on the wealthy part of the business over the last 10 to 12 years. And possibly over the next 10 to 12 minutes, or rather 10 minutes, I'll try and discuss possibly my experiences over the last 10 to 12 years in terms of managing money. So let me start off way back in 2001, 2002, when I joined Kotak in Delhi. And we really heard these anecdotes where we said that you can't really cold call a wealthy client, right? Because a wealthy client needs a reference to start. I remember the first 3 or 4 clients and lawyers I called with references, my phone calls didn't even last for 30 seconds, 40 seconds. And then we had to go absolutely, practically bare feet, cold calling, and seeing the sizes of houses in Delhi. Okay, unlike Bombay, you can spot a wealthy individual in Delhi looking at the size of his house. I remember my first 3 clients, 5A Friends Colony West, S101 Panchsheel Park, W36 GK2, D89 Okla Phase 2. These 4 were my first clients, and essentially they came absolutely from pure cold calling, just looking at the size of the house. Then you wonder, did you need the brand to make the cold call and be there? Okay. Shockingly, I am not talking too long back, I'm just talking 20 years back, right? 20 years back, I remember calling, and out of my first 20 meetings, Kotak at that point of time in Delhi wasn't a big brand. In Bombay, obviously, Kotak was very well known. I remember out of my first 20 meetings I did, nearly 10 to 12 meetings, the client gave the meeting thinking we are coming from Kodak, okay, not from Kotak. And the remaining 4 clients actually thought we came from a security firm to replace the security guards for the office, okay? Because securities wasn't really a word which was a proxy for brokerage. So out of 20 meetings, we ended up doing 12 to 14 meetings with no clue of what Kotak was, okay? So there's this real big myth and perception that the wealthy only want to deal with a big brand, okay? It really doesn't happen. In my 6 years with Kotak, I saw the brand get built as we were progressing and as the industry was building. In 2008, I had the fortune of becoming a semi-entrepreneur, a professional entrepreneur, by starting IFL Wealth together with IFL. IFL came with a brokerage background in 2008. I again had to go through the same time period, and surprisingly, again, over the last 6 months, it's a curve which keeps coming, it seems. 2009-10, we kept getting confused with ILFS. Okay, 2009-10, you really didn't mind it that much. In the last 6 months, we got at least 30 calls from our clients, especially outside Bombay and Delhi. They said, "Theek hai na? ILFS." So people are still confused. It's really. But having said all of that, okay, brands get built, okay, and eventually every wealthy client is different, but they deal with 3 components, okay. Now, who's a wealthy client today, and where is the sources of new money? If you look at today, us as a firm, and say, let's say we manage X amount of money, right? How much is that money is not really important, but we manage X amount of money. Today, if I look at that X, we've actually moved only 0.2 or 0.25 or 20 to 25% of that X from our competitors, okay. More than 75 to 80% is actually new money to the industry, okay. It's money which has come fresh to the industry. And what do I mean when I say money which is fresh to the industry? It's either sale of land, it's sale of stock options, it's sale of businesses, okay? It could be a partial sale of business, a full sale of business, and dividends to existing industrialists. And we made it a part of our DNA and a part of our culture way back in 2010-11, that instead of focusing on the stock of the industry, okay, where we say that, as an RM today, I'm moving and I'm managing 100 crores, how much can I move out of this 100 crores to my new organization? We said we won't focus on stock, we'll focus on flow. And India is growing at 8 to 10%, or whatever. You can argue 7 to 8% in real terms, 12 to 14% in nominal terms. Stock of wealth is effectively growing at least at the same rate, plus add conversion of non-financial assets to financial assets. You got a 20-25% growth in stock of wealth, plus you've got a humongous amount of new flow of wealth coming into the market. Okay, now new flow of wealth is up teen and it's coming every week. Even in challenged markets like this, in the last 4 weeks, there would be at least 8 transactions, okay, 8 transactions across the country where individuals or promoters have, through partial sales or full sales, ended up getting anywhere between 50 crores to, let's say, 1,000 crores. So new flow of money into the industry is very, very high. And today, as entrepreneurs, and all of you, a large part of you here are entrepreneurs, when you look at your businesses, really sizing up the flow becomes really, really more critical than looking at the stock itself. Now, coming to the habits of wealthy, right? I think some of the thoughts which have really resonated with our clients very well include the following, okay? So first, I think is a deep understanding that our clients are smarter than us, okay? So that's the first understanding you need to start with, okay? Because by definition, if he's been able to build that wealth, he has to be at least 2 things, okay? He should have worked hard in his life, and number 2, he should be commercially smart, okay? These are 2 things which you can assume every client has, okay? And third, sooner than later, he will know and hear, okay? So you have to be extremely, extremely transparent with him. Today, to get a large high net worth individual client without discussing a direct plan is only digging your own grave, because sooner than later, he will get to know about it, okay? It's just a question of time he knows about it. So these are 3 things which are very, very critical for us to know, and we have to accept it as status quo even before we go and meet the client, okay? We might feel good about it. On day 1, we come back, we convert the client, but it really doesn't happen. Sooner than later, he discovers much more. Secondly, and most importantly, what is his objective with this money, okay? I think we've got it over a long period of time, but I think it is safe to say that these clients essentially are not looking at wealth creation from this money. They are looking at wealth preservation from this money, okay? And that's a very, 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 very important distinction, okay? Now let's take a step back. How do we create wealth, okay? We are all creating wealth in our own businesses. Today, as an independent financial advisor, as a wealth manager, as a manufacturer of a factory, today I'm doing a lot to create wealth for myself, okay? I put in 24 hours of work. I take credit risk. I take product risk. I deal with the tax guys. I put in, my Saturday, Sundays are not my own anymore. I need to do all of that and then end up with a 15 to 20% return on equity on my money deployed in the business. Even if you look at the Nifty 50 companies today and look at the ROE of those companies as an aggregate, it will be possibly in the region of 14 to 15, 16%. So imagine after doing all that activity and all that effort and taking all the risk, okay, if you're able to get a return of equity of 15, 16, 17%, if only by investing passively, you could make that easily, okay, wouldn't everybody just stop working and only do investments, okay? So it really doesn't happen. And honestly, clients get it, okay? Clients get the fact that this pot of money is what they are investing to preserve rather than create new wealth, okay? But the definition of preservation itself is unique in India, right? Because inflation itself is in the region of 5 to 6%, okay? Forget the last 3 months where it's 3.5%. But it's 5 to 6% on an average. Add to that inflation for the rich, okay? It's possibly 200, 300 basis points more. So if at all you end up at 8, 8.5, 9%, plus another 100 basis to 200 basis points to adjust for the volatility, you're just about preserving your purchasing power of money, okay? So any individual who today, let's say, has 10 crores, 5 crores, 50 crores, 100 crores, if he's able to get 8, 9, 10% on his money progressively for the next 6 to 7 years, he will be able to keep his purchasing power of money constant, okay? And that's what I feel is the objective of 80 to 90% of our clients. And third and most importantly, An objective which the client doesn't understand, but we've realized over a large number of years is, he wants his volatility to be extremely, extremely low. Okay. He understands that the end point is always bright, start point is also bright, but he'll reach a bright end point only if he is able to digest the volatility. And that is something which is very, very critical for him to understand. I'll leave you with a very small example on volatility. When I left Kotak in 2007, on 3rd January 2008, Kotak was a very large institution making 1,000 crores of profit, pretty much similar to what IFL is today. We make 1,000 crores of profit. All my wealth was in one stock, Kotak Bank. I remember I had around about 18,000 shares of Kotak at that point in time. The stock was at 1,250 to 1,300 rupees on 3rd January 2008. Subsequently in that year, after 8 or 9 months, can anybody guess what was the low of the stock? Just 7 days before Diwali. Okay. It was 120 rupees, guys. 120 rupees from 1,320 rupees, okay? A fully functional bank doing extremely well, making more than 1,000 crores of profit, fell by 90%, okay, at its lowest, okay? That's the kind of volatility we all need to get used to, okay? And that's the volatility we need to manage while dealing with clients. Because beyond a point, the sheer value of money is way, way high. Today, obviously, the same Kotak stock is 3,500 rupees, okay? So you could argue that if you kept on the peak day of 3rd January 2008, 1,300, you still got 2.5 times your money. That's factually absolutely right. But you had to see a 1,300 to 120 and then a 120 back to 3,500. And if I have 90% of my money in something like that, I will never be able to manage the volatility. Okay? And it's extremely important for all of us to accept as advisors that the financial markets will be volatile and be able to adjust our client portfolios accordingly. And that's what I think keeps the client in the running for and have that ability to make the 9 to 10%, as opposed to sometimes make 18, sometimes make minus 10 or 15. So that's something which I think is very, very important. Then obviously is us as individuals, right? So all wealthy clients are demanding, okay? They would like to believe that they want us to be available 24/7. They would like that we are at the top of the game at all points in time. And more or less our accessibility in more ways than one essentially represents our care and effort for their portfolio. For example, a very small thing which I noticed which clients love, right? So if you go to a client's office and he says, you know, what trade happened for me last week, or which product did you buy? And there are two kinds of people, right? So there's one kind of person who says, oh, I'm not sure, let me just call my office and check with my service person, what was the trade done? And then there's another guy who remembers his client's portfolio by heart. Okay, he says, this is what I did. This was the value of your portfolio 6 months back, 12 months back, 18 months back. These were the trades we did. As soon as you move to orientation 2 as opposed to orientation 1, okay, he believes that you care, okay. So for example, I often tell our relationship managers, know your client's portfolio by heart, okay. Know your client's portfolio by heart. So before you enter the meeting, you should have a feeling that you remember his portfolio, okay? You care for his portfolio. Only then will he give up his responsibility. And lastly, you need to also understand that we can't sell advice on day one, okay? We would all love to sell advice, okay? None of us love to sell a product, okay? By definition, we want to sell advice, okay? The entire industry, okay, while it makes commission income or advisory fee income, every relationship manager wants to go sleep at night peacefully and sleep well, thinking he's done the best possible for the client, okay? That's the single motto every individual has, okay? Now, when he's doing the best possible for the client, there are two things, right? He is doing the best possible as per the information available and as per his intent, okay? This is the best two things he can do. However, it is impossible for us to be able to sell advice on day one. Imagine being on the other side of the table and you have a 30-year-old or a 25-year-old or a 40-year-old just come across, obviously not as much money as you've made, and effectively tell you, this is advice, right? You won't get it. So wealthy clients typically to start off with on day one may end up buying products, but our skill sets really will come in. How can we convert that product relationship slowly and slowly to an advisory relationship based on trust? Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll open the floor for 2 questions due to paucity of time. But any questions, please raise your hands and we'll have the mic passed on to you. So I'm also going to request you to please introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Vineet Bowry. My question is regarding client acquisition. So when it comes to wealthy clients, it's sort of more complicated or tricky to acquire new clients. So you get them usually through referrals, which I think most of us know of. But any other advice on new client acquisition?
So it's a great question. I think, so we built our own science for client acquisition. That for me is one of our biggest USPs. Okay, so what do we do, for example? Now, when any new deal happens and gets announced on VC Circle and Deal Curry, for example, then you build a circle of influence around that individual, right? So what is this circle of influence? The circle of influence will be the top 10 firms in that industry, okay, in a similar industry. If he is staying in Bombay, the building he stays in, his board of directors, okay, his lawyer and investment banker who did the deal, okay. Now you put all these 4 on an Excel, okay, and map it to your own client base. I think today with 99% probability, we'll find a very, very good common contact, okay. So when you say referral, it has to become a referral, okay. It starts with a cold call, and then you map it to your ecosystem and network in a scientific way to convert it to a referral. And I think that's what makes the difference between a lead and a conversion.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have room for one last question. All right then. So on that note, let's have a round of applause then to thank Karan Bhagat. Thank you so much, Karan.